looking for 中文翻译, you can go to 小儿通. And if you are looking for Korean, we should be up on YouTube in just a short second here. So let's make sure that that's happening.
I know Gloria's going to come back. I'm confident.
Yeah, it looks like we're having a slight freeze in Atlanta.
Hello. Hi, can everybody hear me? Okay, sorry about that. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but I think we're live. And sorry for disappearing for a second. Welcome back to Tuesday Talks. We're super excited to welcome some really great institutions to talk about a very popular topic. And before we do that, I just want to go through a few of the nuts and bolts of our presentation and remind people of how all this is going to go. So, if you need Chinese translation, go ahead and scan the code and you can go to 小儿通. And if you need Korean support, you can go to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to see in the chat some support for the language. And as usual, we'll be playing Mr. View. And if you see Mr. View in my frame, you should take a screenshot and send us an email. And you never know when you might see him because he'll just show up. And so if you take a screenshot and send it to us, if you're one of the first 3, you'll get a prize. So hopefully we'll see some emails coming through. And thank you so much for playing. We also want to take some time to thank all of the partner schools for supporting Tuesday Talks. We could not be doing these talks without you, and so just wanted to recognize these schools. We know that there are many others from other schools as well, but we just wanted to give special recognition to these schools as they've been sending out, their counselors have been sending out information, and they are helping us get the word out. So thank you for joining us once again. And so today we're going to talk about STEM. And I know a lot of people are excited about this topic. People have asked, can we do something about STEM, about picking majors? And so we are going to be doing that. And I have worked with these colleagues before, and I'm very excited to have them join us. They are going to spend some time briefly introducing their institutions. They are similar in some ways and very different in other ways, but STEM is an important part of each of their institutions. We're going to talk a little bit about why people want to study STEM, why study STEM, particularly in the US, what to look for in a STEM school. We're going to talk about STEAM as well, and that might be a new term for some of you. And we're then going to be talking about what it looks like to be an applicant to a STEM school. So without further ado, I'm going to have my esteemed guests introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Weibel. I'm with Rochester Institute of Technology, which we usually call RIT. RIT is a large private research university. And of course, with technology in our name, we're definitely mostly a STEM school, but we have everything. We're what you call a comprehensive school. We have a little bit of everything, from great art and design programs, business programs, science programs, but our biggest programs are computing related and engineering related. So we are actually the 3rd largest graduate of STEM students in the United States. And one of the reasons for that is we have this really great career program where students work while they're still studying while they're still students, and they go and they do real work. And it's a great opportunity, especially for international students, because they can study and work anywhere in the United States when they're on a co-op. It's a special thing that's special, especially for STEM. It really helps out for them to get work experience. We have about 16,000 students. Most of them are undergraduate students, and we're in upstate New York, which is in the northeastern part of the United States. So please check us out. Our website is rit.edu, and we do have a Chinese language website, which is rit.org.cn. And in Chinese, we are Rochester理工大学, so it's university instead of institute, but you'll find us. We're out there. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to the next.
Hi, everyone. My name's Julie Lovelace. I work at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. We also just shorten our name to WPI. We're located in Worcester, Massachusetts. It's about an hour west of the city of Boston. Worcester's a small city, and we are a fairly small campus. We have about 4,700 undergraduate students, 2,000 graduate or PhD students, and we're about 9% international students. Like my colleagues here, we focus on science, technology, engineering, math, and business. And 98% of our students graduate with a major in one of those fields. We are really known for project-based learning at WPI. So our students engage in small and large-scale project opportunities, and they complete STEM projects all over the world. And this really prepares them well to go on after graduation and earn great starting salaries. So with that, I will pause and I will turn it off to our next colleague.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Osbo. I'm the Director of Admission at Harvey Mudd College, which is one of the very few undergraduate-only STEM powerhouses in the United States. We're located in Southern California, about 50 kilometers east of Los Angeles, and we're part of a consortium of colleges in Claremont, 5 of them undergraduate colleges, some of you may have heard of: Pomona, Claremont McKenna College, Scripps, and Pitzer. And then there are 2 graduate schools as well, but we are exclusively serving undergraduates. We have no graduate students whatsoever. So all the attention of our institute, of our faculty and of our resources go to undergraduates. We only offer majors in STEM, only 10 of them. So we're quite small, very interactive, and very collaborative. We also require every student to do research or a signature program called Clinic. We do require our students also, even though we don't offer majors in them, to take a substantial education in humanities, social sciences, and the arts. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Justin from Carnegie Mellon.
Thank you, Peter, and hello, everybody. My name is Justin Money. I'm an associate director in the Office of Admission at Carnegie Mellon. And Carnegie Mellon is a medium-sized research university. We're home to about 6,400 undergraduate students, and we're located in the city of Pittsburgh in the state of Pennsylvania. You'll find that our campus is home to 7 different colleges, and these colleges span from STEM-oriented fields to visual and performing arts. You're going to find colleges including the School of Computer Science, College of Engineering, the Mellon College of Science, the Heinz College, which covers both public policy and information systems, the Dietrich College of Humanities and Social Sciences, the Tepper School of Business, and the College of Fine Arts. Our student body comes from a very wide range of geographic locations. We have students from across the United States, as well as about 17% of our first-year students who are international students. You're going to find a lot of opportunities on our campus for hands-on exploration of your education, as well as interdisciplinary opportunities to be exposed to faculty and to students outside of your own specialization and field of study. And with that, we will transition into our conversation about STEM for the day.
All right. So we're very excited to hear that you all are thinking about studying STEM at university. And since we're all in the US, we really think there's a lot of advantages to studying STEM in the United States. There is a lot of flexibility in major at different universities in the United States. And so if you know you like the concept of STEM, but aren't totally settled on a major, there's definitely some space to move around at different institutions. But of course, a good question to ask admissions officers. At most STEM institutions in the United States, you're not just going to study all STEM all the time. You're going to stay well-rounded and be able to take some humanities classes. Being STEM-focused institutions, we know that there's great value in really having the best research facilities that we can provide for our students. There's also a lot of scholarship opportunities for international students in the United States. And there's academic opportunities as well. A lot of different institutions will provide paths for students to double major, to minor, or to do a bachelor-master combined program in an accelerated time frame. All of the reasons that we do all of this academic stuff is to help you after graduation find a job in STEM, get a good salary in STEM, and be able to stay in the United States through the STEM OPT extension, which allows you to work here in the United States for a few years after graduation. I'll let David talk specifically about some of the career opportunities in STEM on the next slide.
Well, as Julie mentioned, one of the main reasons to look at and seriously consider a STEM education is because there are a lot of career opportunities. Lots and lots of jobs are available in different STEM fields. University, college is a big investment for your parents and also in terms of time for you. And you want to know that when you get out of that, when you're done with your school time, you hopefully will have a good chance of getting a good, well-paying career that you'll be happy with. Technology is increasingly a big part of our lives in just about every aspect of our lives. From the morning we wake up with our phone to the evening when we go to sleep with our phone, technology has become a part of our lives, and computers, they all need to be designed, they all need to be improved, they all need to be updated by someone. Right now in the world, and particularly in the United States, there aren't enough qualified graduates who can move into these jobs and do constructive work at companies like Apple and Google and Microsoft and Amazon and SpaceX and Tesla. All these companies are looking for people with STEM skills. And in recent years, they have not been able to find enough highly qualified students graduating to fill those things to fill those career positions. In 2018, which is sort of the last year we really have good figures for, there were 2.4 million jobs that they could not find enough students to move into and graduate. So oftentimes with many of our programs, you'll find that these majors and different STEM programs have a very high employment rate. It's because companies are looking for people with these kinds of skills. And the science and engineering jobs are growing at a much higher rate and also paying better than other types of fields. We could go to the next slide. One thing about STEM careers is you don't need to know everything. You don't need to know the entire flow of a job in order to be a useful person in a STEM career. Most STEM jobs involve teams of people. And so working together with a team, contributing to a team, being somebody who knows that one part really well and can help to move a project forward is very, very important in STEM fields. And you'd be surprised by how many different kinds of fields, not just engineering, not just making cars or jet engines or computer programming, but many, many fields these days now involve teams that need STEM people to make it a reality. I mean, every office, even our admission office, has an IT person, has a social media person, has people who help to keep everything running, has a web designer. Those are all critical skills these days because we rely so much on technology, every kind of office in the US these days. So, and because of that, there are a lot of different kinds of fields that you might move into as part of a team. And it might be in law or arts or business or marketing or something like that. But you, as a STEM person, you can almost always find a fit. And the salaries tend to be pretty good too. We could go to the next slide.
All right, Gloria, I'll warn you, I'm going to go through some of these pretty quickly. But I think if everybody in the audience were to close their eyes and think about STEM, they would think about some of the images that you're going to see on the next slide. You're going to think about these, large scale Atlas robots that can go into dangerous situations that people can't. You might think about the SpaceX and the private space industry. You might think about oil refineries or suspension bridges, large scale civil engineering or chemical engineering projects. You might think about computer science and electrical engineering and how that goes into all of the technology that we use on a daily basis, from our smartphones to our smartwatches to even a video game or virtual reality headsets. But I think that there is another side to STEM, and STEM is really all about improving people's lives. So on the next few slides, I'll show you some pictures of some projects that students on our campuses have worked on while they're undergraduate students. So our biomedical engineers and our robotics engineers might be working on creating a biomimetic flipper to help endangered sea turtles who have lost a flipper. Our biology students might be working with heart tissue and the ability to grow heart tissue on a spinach leaf. On the next slide, you can see our fire protection engineers figuring out, how can we fight fires more effectively? How can we keep our firefighters safer through engineering and through STEM? And then on this next slide, you can also see this concept of kite energy. We've all heard of wind energy and we've seen those giant wind turbines, but the reality is that they're very expensive. Wind energy can be captured from kites as well through mechanical engineering designs. And this is a way to bring lower cost renewable energy to communities around the world. So when you think about STEM, don't just think about those heavy industrial projects. Think about that softer side, that humanitarian side as well. And think about the creative side. I'll let David talk about that.
Yeah, with STEM is evolving, just like our society is changing all the time. And so just now we saw some examples of great traditional STEM projects, but what's really happening on the fringes, on the outsides of STEM, is that STEM is taking over lots of other fields, especially the creative fields. Things that used to be done by a person with a pencil or with paintings or with a printing press or with a camera are now being done in a way that involves STEM. So you have so many careers now that include STEM aspects, from architects all the way to, I want to say architects to zoologists because A to Z, but lots of different industries are growing to adapt and involve and include STEM. So, 3D printing, computer animation, all these things have become normal parts of industries and careers, and involving digital media, involving animation, involving digital design or computer assisted design, CAD, has become the norm in a lot of creative fields that in the past, maybe in your parents' generation or in my generation, you wouldn't have thought these would be STEM fields. But increasingly, many of these creative fields are also being certified as STEM. So you get not only the job opportunities, but some of the work, and if you're an international student, some of the work and research opportunities that you would get from other STEM fields, you can also get as a web designer or a video game designer or a management information systems student. So STEM is increasingly a part that is not going to go away from these different parts, from these different careers. We could go to the next slide. And that, an extension of that is that the STEM fields need people with creative ideas. They need innovators, and they need people with good eyes, good minds for design. An artistic outlook at the world used to be something that we did not associate with STEM. STEM were sort of had calculators, and they had mathematical programming, and they had they were engineers, and they didn't laugh at the right jokes. But now STEM needs people who have design ideas, artistic ideas, creative ideas, because these things are so much a part of our life. Think of a video game. If you only had coding, if you only knew how to do coding and programming, and you were trying to make a video game that was enjoyable and fun and immersive for people to want to play and to see a whole imaginary world, but you didn't have the artistic aspects, you didn't have the imagination to make that story come true, it would be a terrible video game. The video game industry is bigger than Hollywood now. So there are a lot of jobs, there are a lot of careers, and STEM is increasingly in need of creative, innovative design thinkers. So it's opened up a lot of opportunities for people to do things that are fun, interesting, exciting, and maybe not what you thought of when you were talking about STEM. So that's why we're now saying STEAM. Instead of STEM, we sometimes say STEAM. We put an A in there and the A stands for art. So STEM's for everyone now. Next slide.
All right. So as we think about a lot of those characteristics of the jobs of the STEM and STEAM fields, what are some of the aspects of our campuses that will help you to develop in those ways? And what are some of the distinctive areas that you might want to be asking about? Well, as a student in a STEM field, a lot of your education is going to be very applied. It's going to be hands-on. So taking a look at institutions' facilities, at their opportunities for interdisciplinary study, what kind of maker spaces do they have dedicated to interdisciplinary programs? In what ways do they connect to industry, perhaps through experiential learning opportunities like co-ops or summer internships, or by bringing practitioners into the classroom? You're going to find each of our institutions are going to have slightly different approaches in these spaces. So as you're exploring different colleges and universities, as you're talking to individuals like the four of us, these are some of the areas to ask about. You're also going to find that research can be a big part of your STEM experience, even as an undergraduate. That in addition, you're going to find opportunities through clubs and organizations to get involved in the campus community as well. And as you think about that transition into becoming a STEM student, Gloria, we'll go to the next slide here. I want to pause for just a moment and ask you to think about what would make a great STEM applicant. And I'll invite you, maybe drop some of those characteristics into the chat if you want to. So what, in addition to that strong academic record or performance, will make for a great STEM applicant? All right, so move on to the next slide here and try to answer a little bit of that question and the way that some of the different characteristics that you have thought of play into that application review. You're going to find that our institutions practice something that we call holistic admission. Now, what does that mean? That means that we're looking at a wide array of different characteristics, both what you would think of as hard and soft skills in reviewing an application. The first question that we're asking ourselves is, will this student succeed in our classroom, in our labs, our studios, our maker spaces? This is primarily a more academic question. It's driven by measurable and quantifiable hard skills, questions about your curriculum and preparation, your academic performance in terms of the grades you've received or standardized testing results, if you're choosing to submit SAT or ACT scores, as well as things like language skills for any institution that might have a TOEFL or an IELTS requirement. These collectively are the aspects that show admissibility, but they alone are not enough for a student to be selected for an offer of admission. That's where this second question comes into play. How will the student contribute to our community, for their classmates, for their lab mates, for their roommates? This is where a wide array of different soft skills come into play. Things like collaboration, creativity, humility, empathy. These are all traits that may come through in your involvement outside of the classroom, through your essays, through your recommendations, but are also important to our institutions as we craft a class that will learn together and support each other. So next slide.
So when we are approaching this problem, let's say when you are approaching this problem of thinking which schools to apply to, or this question of which schools to apply to, a lot of students take the approach to research the institutions and say, how can I make myself look like what they are wanting? And I think that's a misguided approach. What I'm going to suggest to you students is you do a kind of a personal inventory, be introspective. This is a good thing for your overall development and your preparation for college. But I would suggest that you start from inside, identify how you learn best, with whom you'd like to learn, what you consider to be fun to do, what kind of a community would best support you, and then build out from those values to find the colleges that match up to you. You'll find just within this panel some very different schools in the ways that they function, even though we're all STEM institutions. So to really try to research the culture of the school and find the school that matches you will not only give you a bit more confidence in making a good decision to apply there, but I suspect it will make you a stronger applicant as well, because you'll be speaking specifically to the values of that institution because it already has matched you. And when I say that, I want you to consider also that where you are now is not where you'll be when you get through your college career. We anticipate that you'll change a lot and you'll not be in the same community. So think about that community piece pretty assertively so that you can grow into what you're going to be like when you graduate from college. Anticipate change. Let's go to the next slide, please. I'd like to put in one other plug, and that is for undergraduate colleges and liberal arts colleges, which sometimes are overlooked among STEM institutions, but they do a very good job, and in particular, send people to PhD at a really high rate in the sciences. And so far, we've had a lot of conversation about fields like computer science and engineering. More and more liberal arts colleges are looking for people in fields like computer science and offering programs there. But keep in mind that this is supposed to be the century of biology, that the world of physics is the sort of building block for any of the sciences, that mathematics is going to be the language of science. So having a rounded education is probably going to stand you in pretty good position to go into any field that you like. So thinking more specifically about you as an applicant, I want you to we want to recognize that things have changed quite a bit in this last year and a half almost. We've seen very different models at different schools around the world. Sometimes this education was entirely remote. In some cases, it was a hybrid. Some schools were able to keep instructing in-person classes. I just this past year saw students who were only graded with a pass or a no credit for one of the semesters, or they had much more flexible policies about grading. Students could drop classes or take them past no credit. In other cases, especially a year ago, spring, there was a do no harm aspect where students' grades could not fall below a certain level. So we have to take that in account when we're reviewing applications, and we're going to have to be sensitive to the context of the student's academic work. It was in several of the regions that I cover for my institution, many students were not able to take tests. And so the importance of a test like an SAT or an ACT really changed this last year. And it really put sort of a brake on the way that colleges were doing admission in the same ways that they had done in the past. But thinking from a student's perspective, your ability to engage in STEM-based activities or other activities, to do ballet, Gloria, or to do programs like Model UN, or any other activities. They don't have to be STEM related to make yourself a good candidate for colleges, even though there are maybe STEM programs that you're interested in. But my ultimate point is that students had less ability to engage in them and to show leadership in them this last year and a half. The ability to forge relationships with faculty, the people who are writing letters of recommendation may have been undermined. And also, we've certainly been aware that a lot of programs that students might otherwise have joined, competitions, summer programs, research opportunities, internships, were much harder to find if they were available at all to students in a particular region. And so we're going to be much more sensitive to where the students are coming from in this regard. Just trust us that we're going to be looking for what is a reasonable expectation for students, given the circumstances that we've just endured. Hopefully, I can use the past tense with that. So, Gloria, let's go to the next slide. So now we're going to go sort of around our group, and we have very different processes at our institutions, and in terms of the application and selection process. So each of us is going to answer this question. I'm going to go first because I'm still talking. At our college, we do not select students by major. In fact, a student at our college is not allowed to select a major even in their first year. So this is going to be a very different practice. So we ask students to apply to the whole institution, and then they decide later. Are some majors more competitive than others? Well, by necessity, if students haven't declared a major in their first year when they're applying, any major at our school is open to any student. We don't have impacted programs at our school. However, Harvey Mudd College does not offer majors in STEM, in fields outside of STEM, although our relationship in Claremont allows us to have some students who would still get a Bachelor of Science degree even though they majored in something like French literature or art history. That is very weird, to be honest with you. I would say that within our program, I'm not sure where to draw the line between technical and more theoretical work, because they're both integrated into each of our majors. And but there are some majors that lean more heavily on the technology side, the creative economy side, fields like computer science is an example. And we're an undergraduate only institution, so we don't offer 5-year programs or master's or beyond the bachelor's degree program. So with that, looks like the next event, we're going to go alphabetically, I suspect, and we're going to toss it back to Justin. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Peter. So for Carnegie Mellon, you do apply directly to one of our undergraduate colleges. Now, unless you're applying within the fine arts, that doesn't mean that you need to know which major necessarily, but you do need to know which of our colleges. So that you want to, for example, go into engineering or into computer science, so on and so forth. Major declaration will occur at some point during the first year here at Carnegie Mellon within our STEM colleges, and by the end of the second year for our humanities and social sciences college. Because you're applying directly to one of our colleges, you will find that our selectivity, our admit rates do vary a little bit from college to college. So there are some that you're going to find that are more selective. The follow-up question that I always get on that is, well, what about internal transfer then? Should I just apply to the least selective and then change my major later on? Internal transfer can also be selective. Those most popular majors, they tend to have the fewest seats available. And because of that, it can be hard to move in. So you want to certainly, I think, reflect upon where your right fit is and be transparent about that in the application process. Oftentimes your best opportunity to enter into a program here at Carnegie Mellon can be as a first year student. You will certainly find opportunities to look at programs outside of STEM, whether that is applying directly to one of those as your primary major, or looking at opportunities through electives, through minors, which about half of our students pursue, or additional majors, which about 1 in 5 will, many doing so outside of their home college. In terms of the programs, I will note that within our STEM programs, the 5-year programs that you'll find here at Carnegie Mellon tend to be integrated bachelor's and master's programs. The only bachelor's program designed as a 5-year would be our architecture program, where we offer a 5-year accredited B.Arch degree within our College of Fine Arts. So with that, I will pass it off to David for a few comments on RIT.
Okay, well, this is really interesting to me because it's so different at different schools. And so RIT is a large research university. Most of the time, students will be applying directly to their major at a school. So, and it's very different applying to different specific majors. We do have undeclared options. You could be, if you totally don't know what you want to study, we have university exploration. That's very, very rare at RIT. Most of the time, students will be, if they're not sure what they want to do, they would apply to their college and maybe be computing exploration or engineering exploration or design exploration. The thing is, RIT has 85 different undergrad majors. So there is a lot of difference between the different majors, and it's important for students to apply to their specific majors so they know if they're going to get in. Students do change from time to time, maybe moving from one major to the other after they're at the school. But because as you learn more about a major, you're going to just realize if you really like it or if it maybe wasn't something that you want to continue with. There are so many more majors offered at the university level than you have at high school that you need to learn about it a little bit. But one reason we do try to get students in their major right away at RIT is because a big part of our study is this co-op program where students will leave school, completely pause their schooling and go work for a company someplace, maybe for a semester, maybe 2 semesters, maybe 3 semesters. For this reason, almost all of our STEM, well, probably most of our STEM majors are 5-year degrees, sometimes even 6-year degrees, because students pause and get work experience before they graduate, and then they come back. And when they're on co-op, they don't pay tuition, they get paid by the company, but it does take time. So a lot of our undergraduate programs are 5-year or even 6-year programs. And we do offer accelerated BS/MS programs where you can graduate after 5 or 6 years with a master's. But it's mostly because we want to prepare students so that they have something to offer during their co-op, so that they know enough about their major that they can be useful to the company. That's why we try to get them into their major right away. RIT also does have a separation of technical and research-oriented majors. So, for example, mechanical engineering, very popular at RIT. We also have mechanical engineering technology. And the mechanical engineering would normally be students who are interested in research and maybe going on getting a graduate degree. And the technology one would be the same skills, but more hands-on and probably more going into the workforce directly out of their undergraduate degree. And some, like I said, some are definitely more competitive just because we have limited spaces in some, and everyone applies to computer science and mechanical engineering, but we have 18 different computing programs and 18 different engineering programs. And oftentimes students, especially when they're right out of high school, they haven't thought about the specific programs that they might be actually interested in. So they all apply to computer science and they all apply to mechanical engineering. And so it gets very competitive for those programs. But if they applied to computer engineering or software engineering or something like that, it might be easier for them. So you have to look at the different schools and how they approach things. And with that, we've got WPI, which probably has a whole different thing.
Yeah, I would say WPI is most similar to Harvey Mudd in that you don't apply directly to a major, you just apply to WPI. And if you're admitted to whatever major you put on the common application. You can change your major at any point during your time at WPI. And part of that is because we're a little bit on the smaller side. We can always kind of adjust and hire faculty if we need to, which we did the other year. We hired 13 new computer science faculty because that was such a popular major a few years back and continues to be. So no major is more competitive than any other major, and you have that power to change your major at any time. WPI does not have many non-STEM majors. We have maybe 5 or 6, so you could certainly apply to one, but we'd like to hear why you're interested in studying a non-STEM major at a STEM-focused institution. And WPI, I would say all of our majors have a little bit of that technical and research piece to it. Our motto is theory and practice. And so, you know, really just every major is going to have that technical aspect, that practical aspect, and opportunities for research. And WPI is a 4-year institution. All of our bachelor's degrees are 4-year degrees. If you decided to do an accelerated master's program, that's where it might take you 5 years. But I will pause there and we can go on to open this up to questions that our audience has.
Thank you so much. This was really great and a lot of interesting details that I didn't know. And so I'm excited to hear about that. And I'm so glad that people have been asking questions and our panelists have been very gracious to answer some of them already. But if you do have more questions, we still have a little bit of time. So make sure you type them into the Q&A box as quickly as you can so that we can try to consolidate these. Before I dive into the questions, I just want to remind everyone that these institutions and individuals would love to engage with you, and they have lots to share. I mean, they did share some about their unique institutions, but they have plenty of other material out there that describes in much more detail about the application process and the special aspects of each of their school. And as Peter mentioned before, like understanding the school is helpful when you are thinking about your own process, if thinking about whether or not it makes sense for you to apply to that institution. So all that to say is please contact them. I know there are specific people who are here who are interested in one specific institution. And so I'd really encourage you to go ahead and email them and go ahead and make sure you go to their events and whatnot. So let's talk a little bit about questions. There are quite a few counselors on this call, friends. So I just wanted to start with that a little bit. There was a question earlier about how do we help our students have a stronger profile for a STEM applicant? And I wanted to ask about recommendation letters. Like, what is helpful to you from a counselor about either the school or the student that helps you in the review process?
I can say for WPI, my go-to is always, because we do so many team-based projects, I'm really looking in those recommendation letters to see how the student engages as a team member. So are they involved in clubs or activities outside of school? How do they work in small teams in the classroom? And that's the number one thing that I personally look for in a recommendation letter.
Some other qualities might be a sense of resourcefulness, ability to be humble, to actually, a lot of the students applying to these schools are students who gave help to others, and now they're in a position in college with difficult curricula to ask for help. And it's good to know the student is confident enough that they can seek that support. how they interact with others, certainly, but their drive and resourcefulness is going to play out an important way.
I would say the recommendation letters specifically are most useful in that they provide a sense of context, an environment for the student. It's one thing to look at the numbers on their grades and the numbers on their testing if we have testing, but it's really useful for us to have a sense of the context of how they perform in their classroom with their other students and as a team, as Julie said. So teachers can do that, and of course the personal statement is also all about giving us a better idea of the student as a person in their environment.
For me, I'll say recommendations that if you think back to those two questions that I had posed, how will the student succeed and how will they contribute to the community? Recommendations are the one piece of the application that I think really bridges those two questions, where we're learning both about you as an academic, but also you as a colleague, as a community member, all of these great factors that my colleagues have mentioned.
We're not just bringing you in to be a math genius. We're bringing you in to be a member of our community, and we're creating a community when we're bringing in an entering class, and we want it to be a fun place that everyone else likes to be as well. So that teamwork part and how students get along is really useful context from the recommendation.
So all these characteristics you just mentioned obviously are not a specific thing to do. And that has come up multiple times in the questions about what extracurricular activities are considered that would be appealing to you. And I know, Peter, you mentioned that it doesn't have to be something that is STEM related to be appealing, but if you could give a little bit, any of you, give a little bit more color on what your suggestion is. There a suggestion for how to approach the extracurricular activities for a STEM applicant?
Well, there are certainly ways to not approach it. Don't do it just to sort of check things off a list and say, okay, I did this for 2 weeks, and I did this for 4 weeks, and I did this for 1 year. We like to see some continuity. We like to see students be committing to something and doing it a little longer. Like Peter says, it doesn't have to be related to your major. We love to see STEM students doing Model United Nations or getting involved with pollution control and cleanup in their environment, things like that. It's more about, I think I certainly like to see that students have done it for more than just a little bit, that it's something they took seriously, that's something they committed to. Maybe if we see them move up from, being just part of the team to maybe being someone who helps with the publicity of the team, and then maybe, the vice president or what, that's nice to see that progression and to see that they're committed and maybe they're helping the people behind them. But being active is a big plus. At our school, extracurriculars are not as important because we have a lot of students that are doing things that are oftentimes what they love is what they study. But we love to see it. It's a wonderful sort of bonus for us when we see students being involved, especially in things that are a little bit different from what they choose to study. I don't know about the other schools.
I'll jump in and say, just like inherent in that question, I think is finding what's the activity that we value the most, right? And the answer is going to vary from applicant to applicant. So my advice is always follow your interests and follow your passions. And when we're putting a class together, know that we're going to need a lot of different interests and passions. If you've ever played on a sports team or you're a fan of a sports team, you know that the most successful teams have players with different talents, right? Some players on a soccer team are going to be your offensive players. Others will play defense. You'll have goalies who are specialized. Similarly, we need leaders. We need students with creative talents, with technical talents. And it's how you as an individual fit into that broader fabric of a community. If everybody had the exact same talents, our campuses would be boring places. We wouldn't be dynamic communities.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you for giving more color on that. And just to piggyback off of that, there are people asking, what about things like competitions? Are those necessary? Like, should we be participating in competitions and winning them in order to be admissible?
That'll vary from school, I'm sure.
My take is I'd like the student to do what they like to do. We're going to try in our selection processes, trying to understand the student's interests, values, motivations. If a student's doing something because it's supposed to please me, it's not going to sit well, and it's not true to you. So I'd be much more concerned about your ability to grow at our college if you pursued the things that really have meaning and give you fulfillment.
Thank you. I love
Yeah.
that.
And it's going to be different, as Justin said, it's going to be different for every student, because we do look at all the material we get, and every student will be different, and some will have high GPAs and low something else, and some will have maybe a great interview or other things going in their application. And it's going to be a little bit different balance. And then we sit back at the end and we say, I really think this student would be a terrific member of our community. And so, it's hard to say. For some students, a competition might really help them because it gives us a context. We can see how they compared to other students in their area or in their country. For other students, maybe a similar competition might just look like they're trying to check things off their list. So we look at everything that students send us, and we're trying to make a whole picture from those different pieces that we have.
Wonderful. So we have a few questions here about testing, and I know the pandemic led to a lot of changes for a lot of institutions. So are there any updates on your end for these 4 institutions in terms of if you're test optional, or if there are any other considerations for testing that have changed since last year?
Well, RIT went test optional last year. We actually planned to do it before the pandemic happened, but it was helpful because it was so hard for many students to take their testing, SAT and ACT. We still require English testing for international students, though.
Is that consistent across the board?
WPI had been test optional for many years, and so we just recently decided to go test blind. So we are not looking at SAT or ACT because they just don't test the things that we care about in the application process. But otherwise, same, we're still asking English proficiency from non-native speakers.
And in case people aren't sure, because there are these different terms. Test optional means that if you have testing, the SAT or the ACT, you can send it in if you think it'll help you, and we'll look at it. We don't require it, though. But test blind means everyone's on the same playing field. So they're even if you send in testing, I believe.
Thank you.
We have a few questions. Let's see about. Let me just, consolidate this a little bit. Okay, there's a question about math. And if someone is not particularly interested in math or good at it, does that mean that they should not apply to a STEM school or a STEM program?
There are lots of STEM fields that are not math focused. So if you choose carefully, if you're not good at math, don't apply to a math major, maybe. But there are lots of ways even to approach math. And nowadays you could do computational mathematics, or there are lots of different ways to get involved on the theoretical end. But more, I think the easier or the more direct route would be, there are so many majors that are STEM, that are integrated into STEM, that are not math at all. For example, with some of our art and design programs are math based, are STEM certified. They're not math based. In fact, they're much more likely to look at a portfolio than at your math scores or your math testing, and they won't require specific math tests or even math classes. So there's a lot of variety out there, and I'm sure that's true at the other schools too.
I'm going to take this at a little different angle. There's math and there's math. Math is a complicated, it's a broad field. So there are some people who could be really good algebraists, and they're not great geometers. It's a thought process that you really are trying to get to, a logical approach. There's some people who love proofs. Other people wish they'd never seen them, right? So it's a big field when you say, something like math. But I would invite you to consider how prevalent will be the world of statistics in almost everything you do in STEM. And so there's a lot of push to get really high in calculus or, get advanced areas of math like linear algebra or differential equations or multivariable. But actually statistics is going to come into play an awful lot in your STEM education.
Wonderful. So if you're not that strong at math, you can still have time to improve on some of the aspects of it, because it does sound like even in the STEM and STEAM fields that they will be helpful to you. Well, wonderful. So let's see, we have, okay, let's see. How can people showcase, let's say they're not really, we no longer have tests, or we don't need to submit them maybe. And then we maybe are strong in math, but it's not showing up in our, on our transcript for some reason. Is there another way that we can prove that we have, some impressive math ability?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Gloria. I think that, I guess I would just like to see students who are not giving up, right? Like that, even though math is not their strong suit, that doesn't mean they're dropping it in their senior year, or it doesn't mean that they're dropping down a level. They're continuing to push forward and really working with teachers. I also think recommendation letters can come into play here. Oftentimes students think, oh, I should ask for a recommendation letter from the classes that I did really well in, but sometimes the teachers of the classes that you struggled in know you a little bit better. And so I think that sometimes that can help us better assess, you might not be a natural at math, but if you're willing to work at it and ask for help and seek those resources, then depending on what major you want to go into at our universities, you may or may not have the potential to succeed there.
I can interject one other piece. There are some disturbing ideas about who can do math and who can't do math. And I'm going to take sort of the gloves off on this part of the conversation. It's, if people imagine, if you were to close your eyes and imagine a mathematician working on a proof, the chances are really high that you would be thinking of a male rather than a female. That doesn't mean women can't do math, but a lot of times women get really disturbing messages about who math is for, and that it restricts how many women want to go into STEM fields sometimes because they're not encouraged to do this, and that's a very big problem. David has been talking about the creative side of fields like video games and things like that, but think of who's using your code that you're writing. And if that person doesn't have a bigger perspective than just the coding, you're going to be less appealing to an employer. Your contributions are going to be more limited. So we really try to be much more inclusive in who we choose to select as our institutions and who we want to encourage into these fields.
Thank you for that, Peter. And unfortunately, I want to keep talking about all of this, but we are almost out of time. And I wanted to make sure that contact information was up here again, because I knew it was hard to see on my window. And so again, I think we had the beginnings of a lot of great conversations, and I hope that you all continue to have those conversations within your own kind of communities and talking and pushing the envelope of what you think college admissions is about and what you think STEM is about, and what you think your futures hold. And so I do want to put in a plug. Obviously, having a conversation is a good way of providing the context for all these things that you were asking about. And so take the opportunity to do an interview. It will give you a sense, even if you are not submitting it to a school, a chance to reflect even about why and how you've gotten to the point that you are at and where you want to go in the future. So thank you once again for joining us for Tuesday Talks. It's been a pleasure seeing all of your names. And next week will be the last one before we take a 1-month break. So make sure you log in if you're interested in the liberal arts. And we're going to talk about some myth busting of the liberal arts next week. So in the meantime, have a great week and we will see you later. Bye. Thank you.